welcome everybody to the conference, the Intentional Community Sociocracy Conference. And the session that you are at right now is a showcase on how sociocracy was implemented at two co-housing communities. And we have a couple speakers here. We have Linda Giltz and we have Abby, and Abby Braithwaite.
Braithwaite, yep.
Okay, pretty close. All right. And so they are going to be carrying the heavy load. I'm just going to be in the background in case somebody forgets to keep themselves muted, that kind of thing. So just the rudimentary things. And I'm just going to remind folks, feel free to use the chat. And feel free to use the reactions. All the recordings from our conferences are available immediately after the presentations through the Zoom lobby. And if you have any technical issues, you can send me a private text. So let's see. And we are doing recording. And I think that's it. I think that's all I have to do. Yay, it's your turn.
All right. Well, thanks. Great to have support on this. I'm Linda Giltz. I am a relatively long-term resident, about 19 years, in Westwood Cohousing in Asheville, North Carolina. And Westwood was built around 25 years ago. So it was one of the first co-housing communities in the United States that got built and up and running and everything. So I am going to tell you about our experiences. I'm going to give you a really brief history and kind of run through how we came to where we are today, what we were doing before Sociocracy and why we switched to Sociocracy, and some things we've learned from that. And then we'll probably see what time it is then, and either take questions then or take some questions, and then Abby's going to switch in after I'm finished and share what she's doing with her community, and we'll just keep going till we get to the end. And I hope that we have some good questions for everybody. So I'm going to switch for a little bit. I'm going to go through. Thought it'd be helpful for me and you to have a few slides to walk you through my presentation, and I'll try to keep an eye. I guess I can't really see once I do that, I can't see everybody, but maybe Marilyn can watch to see if there's anybody that has a question or needs to say something. And I might pause it one or two times just to allow for that. But I'm going to switch.
Yeah, what's your preference, Linda? Do you want to take questions during your presentation or collect them? Like folks can put them in the chat too, and then we can collect them
it might be better since I'm afraid I might go over time if I take too much right off the bat with questions, and maybe your question will get answered as I'm talking through some things. So I think I'd prefer to wait till the end and maybe encourage people to write them into the chat or make a note of them so that you can ask them at the end. All right, I'll give it a whirl here. I'm going to share my screen. Here you should see a title slide.
Looks good.
Yeah? Okay, wonderful. I figured it would be helpful to have this information. You don't have to jot it all down. You'll be able to get it afterwards as well. So I told you my brief outline. I have one slide just to kind of orient you to where we are. Asheville's in Western North Carolina, and we're kind of in the urban part of working class neighborhood here in West Asheville. And our dot on the map is shown there. And then I just put a brief, really basic layout of our community, just in case people might be interested in that as a co-housing community. I know everybody's not from co-housing communities, but there's a lot that goes into the design of them, and I don't have time to talk about that all right now, but at the end I give a link to the website, and there's some good pictures and information on there about our community. We'll go to the next one. So I wanted to give a brief timeline just to lead up to the rest of the discussion. So back in 1986, we had a couple founders. It was a woman and her parents that had traveled to Denmark and looked all around, and they were so excited about co-housing that they wanted to find a place and start one, and they had some ties to Asheville, but not a lot. And but they chose Asheville because they thought it would be a nice place to do a community and bring people together. And so the founders bought the lot in 1986, spent some time gathering a group of people around it and thinking about it, designing it together. And by 1998, the community was built and people were moving in. So just an appreciation for the amount of time it sometimes takes to get that kind of stuff done. In the beginning, all the way through to 2017, they were using a form of consensus to make decisions, and had a pretty kind of a top-down, like a board. There was a board and a community council and a bunch of teams. And some of the teams kind of reported to the board and some reported to the community council. But then I'll go through what the reasons were in a minute, but a number of people were getting dissatisfied with our consensus methodology and our outcomes and just how things were going. So we started hearing about sociocracy and dynamic governance, which were interchangeable, really. And some of us started taking training classes and reading, and there was a group that we formed a study group of about 6 of us, I think, 5 or 6 of us, to kind of share what we were thinking about and talk about how we might transition from consensus to sociocracy. We got some help from Jerry Koch Gonzalez, and then we also brought more information about sociocracy into the community over that period of time too, to give people an overview and a feel for what it might be like and what we were thinking of, and we did finally get consensus on moving forward to try this out, and that was in 2018 when we went live. And then since then, we've been practicing it. We've been doing evaluations really about every 2 years instead of every year, just kind of worked that way. But we've been checking in on things all throughout the whole time. So the next thing I'm going to show you is our first structure, because it's gone through some change over time, but some of these might look familiar to you. We have kind of this central circle here, which is our board, also serves as our board, and has representatives from the buildings and grounds circle. That's the main column, planets going around the sun, administrative, and then the other main circle was community circle, and then we had all these other circles kind of and as ancillary circles to those circles. It looks on paper, and it felt like we had a lot of people that needed to be filling all those roles and going to lots of meetings, and it was a bit intimidating, I think, at first to people, but that's we intentionally did I was going to point out, intentionally with our buildings and grounds and our administrative and our community circle, each of those circles has 2 board members in it. And North Carolina, if you have a committee that has 2 board members on it, you can make decisions on behalf of the board. And we thought that'd be a useful thing to go into to help us distribute the power out through the authority, out through the organization, and have more decentralized decision making. So that was a real intentional reason. And we looked at a lot of other structures, and then we just tried to kind of think of all the work that we had to do and map it out into a structure. So that we've made a couple times we've made changes. We recently made a relatively bigger change, a set of changes, and this is what it looks like currently. And I've taken out some of the names to make it a little easier to read of people. and you'll notice we don't have so many circles on that page. We didn't need that many actual circles, but we needed the functions to stay where they were essentially. But we took out a lot of the circles. We also split our administrative circle into finance and governance. So there's two different circles handling those things. And then we moved around a couple things. And this past year, we hired a property management company. And that's R&P up here, who have kind of, little ties into some of these circles more so than other circles because of the work that they're doing under contract. So that's an experiment right now where we are, trying it out. Some of it's working well and some of it's not working so well, but we've got a lot of needs and we have less people able to fill a lot of the work needs. And so we chose that, some of the things like accounting and we're taking up a lot of people's time. So it'll be interesting to see how we come out, financially and otherwise, after we go through this for a year or so. I might take, if there are any questions, right, like maybe specific on circle structure, that might, if it would help anybody, I'll address that. Otherwise, I'll move on. Are you seeing anybody, Marilyn? All right, I'm going to move on. So, why? We had a lot of issues with consensus over the years. It wasn't being, and I'll say for my own self, I'm a community planner. I facilitated a whole bunch of meetings all throughout my career, and a lot of different groups of people, types of people. And I learned consensus to do that early on in my career. And, people practice consensus in slightly different ways. And some processes work better than others. I think our process had some flaws and just the other things about consensus. But one thing was it took a lot of time to reach consensus with everybody having to make most all the decisions. And that's how we were running. That's how we were running for all these years. And one of the biggest things that got in our way was there was a real focus on concerns and making sure that we could think of all the concerns possible, that people might have about this. And so we weren't that discerning about that, which we could have been, but we weren't. And spent a lot of time, trying to address every single one of them. And also people were really hooked on having something that was really just, perfect, and would last for a long time, so we wouldn't have to revisit this again because, it could take so much time to make a decision. You don't want to have to go back and reopen it. Right. So that was part of the psychology of that. But that also, led to, since it took a lot of time, sometimes we just didn't get to a resolution on things. So we ended up with a lot of issues that we talked about and couldn't quite get consensus. So they just, they got set aside for a while, and maybe it was a long while, but they weren't resolved. And so that was disconcerting also. And it also, made the board feel like, well, we've got to take on more things to get things done, make some of these decisions. People got frustrated because we weren't really accomplishing a whole lot, with our meetings. And so the other thing about consensus is that, there is the ability to block decisions. And we didn't have that happen many times, but it did happen a few times while I was here. And it just, and the other thing was people sometimes would wait to kind of weigh in or even participate in the meetings until we were getting close to having a resolution or a decision. And then they would come in with a new set of concerns to work with. And, it wasn't very clean, and it wasn't working very well for us for all those reasons. So we, like I said, a number of us started exploring other ways of making decisions. And And we were really drawn to the Sociocracy framework and, you know, the whole package of it all. And so a few of us took a workshop with John Buck as a teacher. A few of us took a workshop with Diana Leaf Christian. And then I think another one or two went with the Sociocracy for us. So we came kind of together with a mix of training that was pretty consistent. There were small things that, you know, each teacher, you know, has their own way of talking about certain things. But we all came away from that thinking that we have to try this. This is really going to help our community. So what we have kind of found as the benefits, or what's really been working well, are you know, people, we just started off using rounds, and people were like, wow, this is just so much better of a discussion that we're having. It brought out more points. It got people to share more deeply. We were starting to see better decisions come. So the rounds were just a hit, and we, you know, even if we weren't going to continue doing Sociocracy, we would keep doing rounds. You know, I think people, you know, just felt like that was a great a thing to add to what we were doing. You know, we also liked the let's see, the other thing, I want to make sure I've got some things on the slide and some things not on the slide. I mentioned that. Okay, so I'm just, then I'm back on track here. Okay. I have my notes here. I'm lost my place. The processes and the structure that Sociocracy provides, we found to be very helpful. Things were clearly explained and made sense. It was orderly, kind of, and really made for efficient, I think, efficiency in making decisions, in selecting people for roles, and running meetings, and that's really, I think people have really appreciated that, and having some consistency with all that. And we also felt like it's made for better communications. And that probably comes out of a lot of all the other things that I've said. But having the circle structure, having, you know, communications between the circles on a more regular basis, and with the community on a more regular basis, and people knowing about what else is going on, that really did get improved. And the transparency, because we have all these meetings are open to anyone. We try to make a real point of making sure they know that when the meetings are happening, and they're welcome to come. That's been really helpful. You know, I talked about with consensus, there was a lot of focus on concerns, which we could call objections. The concerns are kind of broader than objections in the way we were working with them. But I really think that the way Sociocracy frames objections and frames them in a positive way, they're respected, and that they're incorporated into the decision making really deliberately to improve the decision that you're making. That really has transformed, I think. Our decisions are better. They're more complete. They're more. They've got more support behind them because everybody's really been heard. So that's been a great benefit of Sociocracy, and it's been flexible, you know, to adapt how we need to change things based on our changing needs. Like I mentioned, how we've changed our structure around. We aren't doing double linking in all the circles because we don't have the manpower for it, but we're still making sure that we've got enough people with, you know, enough people with an interest and authority, you know, to make appropriate decisions. And I guess the thing that we all took away from Diana, and probably other people too, but she's the one that really hammered it home, was the good enough for now and safe enough to try mottos, you know, and not going for that perfect solution, you know, that that we'll never get to probably. So we've also had challenges, and we've learned a lot over this time. It's been a little bit hard to provide consistent training to everybody, with a couple things. We've got, new people coming in, whenever they come in. We've got a community of 24 housing units, and, we've got turnover, different rates of turnover, but that happens. I mean, we've got new people that we have to train, whether they're owners or tenants. And we've got some materials, but we've just, sometimes we don't keep up with it as much as we could. And there was a reluctance from long-term residents to really jump in and learn. It's took them a long time. They were very attached, some of them, to consensus, attached to full circle decision-making, and didn't want to take workshops or training, what we did develop isn't kind of a 1 hour orientation, and then some resources to help people go a little bit deeper in some of the topics. And that works for people that are excited about it, but it doesn't work for everyone that, we also try to teach the methodology as we facilitate meetings, to kind of restate, like, okay, here's what we're going to do next. We're going to do this, 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 and this, and explain the process we're going to go through, and use our meetings as our full circle meetings, especially, but our other meetings too, as a learning opportunity. And we've also tried to incorporate more mentoring for leadership positions, especially, so that as there is a leadership transition, the person that was the leader before, or was the administrator before, or whatever that is, or the facilitator, to work with the incoming people and support them, as they get started into their new roles. And that's been really helpful. Even though it's improved our communications, it's still a challenge, it seems like, to get consistent, ongoing communication, out there, and make sure, and we feel that we have to put it out in at least, through email, through our internal kind of, it's called Slack. We use Slack as a kind of internal communication system, and a paper calendar, and maybe the Blackboard too, like for like notices that we really want people to see, or but as people read what they want to read, and you can just do your best with that. But that's a challenge, to make sure you really reach people with what's important at the time. I mentioned a little bit about how our community's changing, and that is, it's also changing in age. We've got a number of people that were original residents here that are aging out. We have a hard time attracting young families, even though we would really like to keep doing that. And we do get them more on a rental basis than in a purchase basis, because the main problem with that is the increasing house prices. The real estate market has really increased a lot here in Asheville. It's become a popular place to visit and to live, and it's making it much less affordable for younger families. So that also then pushes, the older people that have more means, to come into the community. So just, those kinds of things have made it a challenge to get work done in the community, as well as and get people to participate in ways that they want to, and also just learning learning sociocracy and how to work within the community and how to participate meaningfully. And then I think I mentioned the things on leadership already. We especially during COVID, and I don't know if that was partly the reason, because people kind of withdrew more then. And then coming out of COVID, we actually had a few people pass away, and we had some empty units for a little while, and we had a vacuum of leadership and so it made us really think about that more, and how how to cultivate leaders and encourage new leadership. But I think we're thinking more now than we used to about kind of, okay, now how can we get more people ready to take on leadership roles? And I put the bottom one in there because, you know, community living in community by itself, there's so many things that we see from our typical American culture, and many people brought up here, the individualism, some of the things that people have talked about throughout the day today, you know, just the power, the lack of, you know, some people don't have good communication skills, that they're not used to collaborating and cooperating, and, you know, all those things, you know, come into play. And that comes into play with, you know, sociocracy as well. But that's just out there as a challenge that we all face. So I think,
And I need to do a little time check with you. How
I know that's my last slide. So
okay, great. Thanks.
How's that? That's our community a few years ago, people, and the website. I've got the website link in there too, so that if people want to take a look at what it looks like here and learn more about that, there's that. So, well,
Thank
Abby,
you
what do
so
you think?
much.
Would you like to make some comments and then we open up, or it's up to you?
I think we should go to Abby to give her enough time.
Mhm.
And then we can maybe see if anyone has questions. And I would encourage you to put your questions in the chat if you would, or Audrey mentioned the Q&A function.
So show of hands real quick. I have a really basic PowerPoint that I'll probably forget to scroll through, and it's mostly designed to slow me down so I don't get lost. So who's tired of PowerPoints? Raise thumbs up if you're tired of PowerPoints, and wave if you want to see another PowerPoint. So, okay, here we go. So now I get to forget to advance the slides and all those things. And like I said, it's just pretty general, but I will try to have it keep me on track. Okay, so slide one, see I'm already off. All right, so we are Cathedral Park Co-Housing, and we are here not as experts, but as folks who are learning by doing. We are a forming community in Portland, Oregon. Some of our folks have been at this for about a decade, some of us for about half a decade, and our newest members are a couple weeks old. So it's really, we're in this really dynamic spot always of who are we, how do we define ourselves, and how do we learn and govern ourselves. And most of our community building work started mid-pandemic. There were sort of 2 members going into the pandemic. So all of our marketing was virtual. All of our work has been virtual. It allows us to have members from as far away as Texas and California. We've had explorers on the East Coast. Nobody's come aboard from that far away yet, but we have a couple explorers from the East Coast now. And I was really dubious at the beginning what virtual organizing was going to feel like, but it's been amazing. And we have one member who joined from Berkeley, California, before she ever met any of us in person. She knew Portland well, but she didn't come see us, and she was ready to join. So it's sort of shifted my thinking on the power of virtual organizing. I didn't think it was possible. And just a little bit about us. We are organized, sort of our founding core value is being a community where everybody can show up and experience true belonging. And I know that's how co-housing feels about itself anyhow. But what that looks like for us is trying to take down some of the traditional barriers for people getting into co-housing. So in addition to being multi-generational, and our newest member is a single mom with twin 4-year-olds, so that's super exciting. We have our first kids. 10 to 20% of our units will be subsidized for purchase by low-income families. And we're doing that in partnership with both a local land trust and with a nonprofit that our founding member started to support more inclusive co-housing. So we're sort of the pilot project of that nonprofit. And then 20 to 25% of our homes will be for somebody with an intellectual disability, which is a population that really struggles to find inclusive community housing. Some of those will be kids nested in families, and some will be adults and young adults living on their own. So my family is involved in the hopes that we can build a community for our 17-year-old daughter with Down syndrome to move into when she's ready to be done with us, but have her nested in a really interdependent circle of people who want to be with her. It won't be a care facility, but it will give her a network of people that are right outside her door. So as we're trying to figure out how to build a community that we know is going to be have a lot of neurodiversity and have a lot of diversity in terms of who can show up when and how much and how the work is going to get done, we wanted to find a governance style that would naturally fit with that. And our founding member came across Sociocracy early on at a conference and brought it to me. And basically she and I said, yeah, this seems like a really good fit for us. We've reaffirmed that decision as the community has grown over time and sort of come together, and people continue to sign on with it. So, we don't want to be prescriptive forever as the two founding members that this is the only way, but everybody's been gracious to sort of give it a shot and try to learn something new along with us. So how did we choose it and why? I just touched on that a little bit. Why it's sort of that embrace of imperfection that Linda alluded to, with consensus feeling like we have to get to the exact answer. For us, that feeling of it's good enough for now, it's safe enough to try, which is really appealing from the outset. And it was really felt like an essential way to build this community where people are welcome and safe and appreciated. And so home. So what about Sociocracy in particular feels good for that neurodiversity side is we know we're going to have people with really different communication styles. Not everybody's going to be able to be verbal, sitting in a long meeting. We had a member early on who physically couldn't sit still for more than an hour. So the idea of long plenary meetings, just no way, it was a non-starter. And it would be really easy for some of our members to be tokenized. Oh yes, Adara is on that committee with Down syndrome. Look, we have our disabled people part of things, but sitting in a big meeting where all the work looks the same, she might have a way to really meaningfully contribute. So we wanted to avoid tokenism and avoid silencing people and really make as broad a chance for people's voices to be heard as possible. We also know people are really going to have different capacity for contribution, whether that's their time because they're already working 2 jobs and raising twin 4-year-olds, or their finances, or just their ability again to sit and do the legal work of being in a meeting. So we want to have lots of different avenues for participation. Smaller circles in Sociocracy, I kind of alluded to, are going to allow people to participate in different ways. And then we've just heard from communities like Linda's that started with consensus and later did this laborious process of learning Sociocracy. We thought, well, why don't we get ahead of that and start with a thing that feels leaner and more efficient to begin with. And then our property that we own is underneath the St. John's Bridge in North Portland. So we lean to this bridge for metaphor and iconography quite a lot as a community. But I feel like Sociocracy really has allowed us to lean into its existing structure, and we don't have to make up how to do everything. We know there's the decision-making process, there's the meeting facilitation, there's the circles which allow us to be planful of where the work is done. And so I feel like so much of co-housing is learning from the people that have come before us. And so we have that. And then we also have the structure of Sociocracy to lean into. Let's see. And sort of the built-in communication across circle structures has been helpful and important. And now it's my turn to get lost in my notes. I'm going to talk a little bit more in a bit about what our actual structure looks like and how we actually do things, but I'm sort of still in the why for the moment. It's also, we have a really strong founding member. And so this feels like a really authentic way to redistribute some of the dreams and not just the power, but the thoughts and the ideas and the values across more people, taking her out of some of the circles where work is getting done and making sure that we're all working together, supporting those founding dreams as we go forward felt really important. And then the thing that gets me most excited is just, the sort of the concept that Linda again touched on about objections making things stronger, and the range of tolerance, and this sort of the structure of Sociocracy, I think, is helping us prepare to live in community together. When I was pregnant with my first child, pregnancy was super unexpected. And I realized really quickly that pregnancy prepares you for childbirth, which prepares you for parenthood, right? There's no control in any of that. You just kind of get thrown through life. And I feel like sociocracy and learning sociocracy and its pitfalls as we're forming as a community is really going to give us a head start when we're actually living together and having to make day-to-day decisions together. Again, that time to make sure every voice is heard, that quieter people can get their voice on the table. And then really, we have a couple members who are self-proclaimed fear of missing out, FOMO people. And for them, it's a real good exercise in trust to not sit in every meeting and watch every decision get made. And it's hard and it's challenging, and it feels really important as a foundational piece to start to trust each other more, and know that work can get done well without being involved in every piece of it. See, I skipped that one. That's my little what it looks like, the range of tolerance slide that I put in for you, but we're going to move past it now. So what has been our process for learning? We started really individualistic. People would find out about it at a conference or sign up for a Sociocracy for All workshop, buy the book and read it on their own. And that started to feel like we needed something a little more organized. We started a book group. We all were going to read Who Decides and meet once a month to decide to read a chapter. But every meeting had different people there. Every meeting had half the people or more not having read the chapter. And it just felt like we were spinning our wheels with a book group. Again, trying to get together more than once a month wasn't something people wanted to do, but they also weren't showing up once a month. We shifted to a study group model, thinking, well, if we just say, we don't have to do the reading, just come. That didn't really help anything. So I think it was last summer that we finally said, you know what, let's just start doing it more. And at that point, we already had circles, and we had started with rounds in most of our conversations, but not all of them. But we thought, you know, let's just make another active decision that this is what we're doing, and let's start doing sociocracy. And we know we're going to make mistakes. We know it's going to be messy. We ask each other for grace about correcting each other's mistakes. People are continuing their individual learning, which means, you know, so Rebecca just went through the, I think, 4-week session with Sociocracy for All, and she knows stuff that I don't know as the facilitator, and she'll beat me and say, oh, we're supposed to do it this way. We're supposed to do it this way. And it's fantastic. We just know that that's going to happen, that we're going to interrupt each other, that we're going to, but that it's in the spirit of improving and getting better. Guiding each other gracefully. And then we get together once a month as a full membership, and we've just blocked out 45 minutes of that meeting for sociocracy education. Once we master sociocracy, we'll move into other pieces, or as other themes for education arise, we'll use that. But right now it is for sociocracy. And what we've sort of shifted to is people that do the individual learning will present on something that they've learned. So tomorrow, Rebecca's going to present on the course she just took. Rick or I might present on bits we've taken from today, and just share the knowledge out, share every opportunity for learning online that we come up with, and say, you guys should watch this video, you should do this course, you should check this out. Definitely strongly considering the, what is it called? Organizational Leaders Program now, because that feels like might be a good moment for us. And then we're also in conversation with Ted Rao about maybe doing a Northwest symposium on Sociocracy for All in March. So if you're out this way and want to know more about that, feel free to get in touch, but sort of early stages of that conversation. So that's our learning. And I have no idea the time, but I'm just going to jump really quickly into what it looks like to just start doing it while we're learning. So we've been a really small group. It's just recently that we got 5 more members. So it was always the same handful of us doing the work. So we just started with 3 circles to start things off: membership and marketing, process and problem solving, and then we smushed together development, legal, and finance. And because we're such a small group, that double linking is pretty natural. Most of us sit on more than one circle, so the communication is pretty fluid between those groups. And we do use our monthly member meetings as our general circle right now. And that's been working for us. And we've been really slow at rolling out sort of the role, selecting roles and putting the aims and domains and those formal things on paper. We're getting there. We're starting to do it. And we call it Sociocracy in action. So the process circle just put our aims and mission and domains together and brought them to a member meeting to show them this is what it looked like when we did this work, so that people can see how how it works. So that's kind of how we're using circles. For meeting facilitation, it's been amazing. I sort of have become the default facilitator, and it's so nice to have a structure that's not about me, that comes from somewhere else. It's been really useful. And rounds have been life-changing for us as a community. Just to really slow down and hear each other has been enormous. You know, both for businessy things and for those, you know, we recently asked a question, how do you respond in challenging moments? And there had been a lot of tension building amongst us as a community. And I think we were all misunderstanding why different people were acting different ways. And so to sit down and have each of us explain how we go through a challenging situation, explained a lot of things and released a lot of the tension. And it was huge. And just to have that be rounds where everybody got their 2 minutes to talk about it, and feel it and hear it and be heard was wonderful. And look, I'm skipping slides again. So how's it going and where do we go next? It's messy. We're still learning. We are working on transitioning more of our decisions to their circles. We're still, you know, coming together for a lot of them because a lot of them feel pretty big and consequential for everybody in the stage of the development that we are right now. But we're working on sort of guiding people to a different process that will maybe, I think somebody in one of my sessions earlier said that their community will have input sessions for folks to give input on a new policy, and then policy gets made somewhere else, and then it gets brought back for a consent round. And we've done that on a couple of occasions, and that's really, really good for who we are and where we are right now. Yeah, I guess that's kind of a nutshell blast of how we're doing it in our forming world.
Oh, great, Emmy. Thank you. Thank you both for sharing. We did have a question, and feel free to also ask your questions. One that was in the Q&A. I think this is for you, Linda, from Audrey. I'm wondering how people adjusted to doing the difference between concerns and objections, and how they felt about not objecting based on their concerns. So let me know, Audrey, if I don't have that.
I think that some people are still learning. But I think that what's been helpful is both the range of tolerance and helping people think about, you know, personal versus community, you know, kind of level concern. You know, that's how we've been talking to people, I think, you know, so that they can get beyond a personal concern that's not going to, you know, I know that there's different terms that y'all use with it, that it won't go against the aims or domains or the circle, you know, but we talk also about, you know, is this going to be benefit? You know, is this going to benefit our community, you know, or be detrimental to it? You know, try to help people think through that to help them discern how important it is to them and what it means to the community.
Thanks, Linda. Okay, we have a hand up. Jamie, do you want to go ahead and give?
Yeah, I'm just curious with both communities, is there a policy or is there an expectation that every member will serve on a circle?
Do you have an answer, Abby? Or
I'll go really quickly. We are being pretty deliberate. Our motto is sort of contribute what you can when you can, and we know that's going to look different for everybody. So for the folks who can sit on a circle, yes. For folks who, whether it's time or ability constraints, that doesn't work, there will be other ways to contribute. I liked this morning, somebody had a diagram of, they called them teams. They said they're officially called something else. But having ways to be on the watering team without having to sit on the landscaping circle, that's really appealing for our community.
That's similar to what we do too. Although I think it'd be nice if people could actually be part of the circle as a member of the circle, at least be with one circle. But right now, the way we have our participation policy stated is that we expect people to do work to support at least 2 circles, which means, yeah, one of them could be supporting the grounds team or the landscape team by doing watering, or, you know, taking on tasks of a couple different circles. But they may not actually attend any meetings, because some people really don't want to attend meetings, but they're willing to do a lot of work, other work. Yeah.
Thanks. And then we have another question in the Q&A for Abby. How do people with disabilities do with sociocracy?
So to be frank, for most of our current members and past members with disabilities, Zoom is a barrier. So a lot of folks have people contributing as proxy. I think once we're, moved in and people are living in community together, there will be many more avenues for participation. But this phase is pretty tricky. Although my last slide was my daughter, who comes to events that we do a handful of events in person, and that was her picking out, naming her unit. So they're definitely part of our community. They're not, for the most part, currently as much part of the work, but we get voice, we'll hear contributions from folks. We did have a member with cerebral palsy who was incredibly active early on. She ended up deciding we were too slow for her. And she found a community to move into, and she's moving in this month. Waiting years was not, she was like, I'm 30, I'm done with living with my mom. I think we set a fire under her that she could get out of her mom's house. And then when it wasn't happening fast enough, she's like, see you guys, thank you. She's lovely and wonderful, and actually was pretty formative. She's one of the people who said, I can't sit in a meeting longer than an hour. So she really helped us think about accessibility in a pretty deep way. That was super helpful. And, little things that I never would have thought of, like we had people's bios on the website, and she said, my screen reader can't read those. I need PDFs. And so now we have, or not PDFs, I need Word documents. So now we have links to a pile of Word docs that people can click on to find out their bios, because that becomes more accessible for everybody. So definitely have helped us think about how to organize. But I think there will be a lot more opportunities for contribution when we're in community.
Great. Any other questions? Okay. And Jamie, that was, your hand is up from your other question, or do you have another question?
Another one.
Okay.
Sorry, I guess more for Linda. The transition from consensus, the consensus model you were using to sociocracy, was that like there was a launch date, and before that you were doing consensus, or did you sort of transition to that, but using some sociocracy processes and some together? Because our forming group is sort of, we sort of have the same kind of challenges, I think.
Yeah, and if it's useful, we kind of wrote down what our implementation process would be as we were planning for that transition, and I could probably share that with you if that would be helpful to you. But we did, we had discussions with the community leading up to the transition. We came up with our own election process that was sociocratic, but we wanted a full circle to select the leaders of the main circles. So that everybody, we thought that would help buy-in, like everybody did get, okay, well, I really support that person. They have to be trusting, that's the initial leaders in the main areas. So that, and then we have wrote that up too for posterity. But so yeah, I did. So we did intentionally kind of take it step by step, and once that leaders were chosen, then circles formed. We provided an initial draft of domains and aims to each of those circles, and they said, now take a look at this and suggest revisions as you think you're needed. And then we got those kind of back and all approved. So yeah, it took 6 months or so probably to kind of go through those steps till we felt like, okay, now the circles are up and running, people are in their roles, we've got aims and domains that are all agreed to, and then we're, really doing things now, but that's kind of how we did it.
Thank you.
Thanks. And any other questions? All right. Well, we're ending right about on time. I want to really thank Linda and Abby, both of you. I mean, really interesting to see the range here from a community that's been in existence for a really long time. And actually, Abby, you're in my backyard. I live in Hood River. So,
Yeah.
and our developer is also UDP. So we need to connect. And yeah, we will do that. So yeah, really exciting to hear what you're doing with your specific community and at such an early stage. So I want to thank everybody here for attending and providing such great attention to our two presenters. And if you found this beneficial, also to remind you that to go to the donate page on the Sociocracy for All website. So help support more work like this. So thank you all. And you can return to the lobby, find your next session, and we'll see you there.